The room went silent. I stood in the corner of my own mother's living room, a ghost in my childhood home. My sister-in-law, Brenda, was holding the red velvet box, the one Mom specifically told me never to lose. Brenda's eyes weren't filled with grief. They were gleaming with a predatory hunger as she pulled out the heavy gold necklace and the ornate emerald brooch. "It's only fair, Leo," Brenda said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "As the wife of the eldest son, I should manage the family estate. You're just, well, you're between jobs. You'd probably just pawn these for rent." My brother Mark looked at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. He had always been Brenda's puppet. "That jewelry wasn't just gold, Brenda," I said quietly. My voice was steady, despite the heat rising in my chest. "There's instructions. There's a legal process for the inheritance." Brenda let out a sharp, mocking laugh. She draped the $20,000 necklace over her neck and looked in the mirror. "Instructions? The only instruction Mom left was a messy house and a pile of debt. This is my payment for putting up with this family. Now be a good little brother and help us pack the rest of the furniture. We've already listed the house for sale." I felt the weight of the small, silver flash drive in my pocket. I also thought about the one item Brenda hadn't noticed, a heavy antique locket she had tossed back into the box like it was junk. She thought she was stealing diamonds. She didn't realize she had just walked into a legal minefield. "I wouldn't wear that if I were you," I warned. Brenda turned, her eyes narrowing. "Or what? You'll call the police? Go ahead. I'm the executor's wife. You're just a nobody with a library card." I didn't call the police, not yet. I simply took out my phone and hit stop on the recording app. "You're right," I said, walking toward the door. "I'm nobody, but you might want to check the insurance clauses on those pieces before you try to sell them." As I walked out, I heard her shouting, "It's all mine, Leo, every single gram." She didn't realize the necklace wasn't the prize. The jewelry was a distraction. The real inheritance was locked inside a vault that required a physical key, a key that was currently hidden inside the very brooch she was wearing. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom's lawyer, Mr. Sterling. "Leo, the silent grace period is over. Did she take the bait?" I sat in my dim apartment, staring at the screen of my laptop. For years I had been the quiet one, the brother who stayed home to care for Mom while Mark was out building his empire on borrowed money. They treated me like a live-in nurse, a failure who couldn't cut it in the corporate world. What they didn't know was that I had spent those quiet nights studying, not just books, but the way Mark and Brenda were funneling Mom's pension into their own accounts. The next morning, the humiliation went public. I received an email from the family's group chat. It was a photo of a legal document, or what looked like one. It was a notice of eviction for my apartment, which technically was owned by Mom's estate. "Since you want to be difficult about the jewelry, we're reclaiming the estate's assets," Mark had written. "You have 48 hours to clear out. We've changed the locks on Mom's house already." I didn't panic. I went to my evidence folder on my desktop. I had copies of every bank statement from the last 5 years. I had the deed to the house, which held a very specific life estate clause Brenda's cheap lawyer had missed. I called Mr. Sterling. "They've started the eviction." "Good," Sterling's voice was gravelly. "That constitutes bad faith under the terms of the private trust. Have you checked the GPS tracker?" I opened a secondary app. A small red dot was moving through the city's diamond district. Brenda was already trying to sell the stolen goods. She was so predictable. She thought she was liquidating a dead woman's past, but she was actually triggering a criminal fraud investigation. I drove down to the diamond district and waited. 10 minutes later, I saw Brenda's white Mercedes pull up to a high-end jeweler. She walked in, head held high, wearing a designer coat she couldn't afford.
I followed her inside, staying out of sight. "I'd like an appraisal for these," I heard her tell the jeweler. "They are family heirlooms. I'm looking to sell today." The jeweler put on his loupe and examined the brooch, the one containing the key. His face went pale. He looked from the jewelry to Brenda, then back to the jewelry. "Ma'am," the jeweler said, his voice trembling, "where did you get this?" "It's mine," Brenda snapped. "Inherited. Is there a problem?" "The problem," a voice boomed from the doorway, "is that those items were reported as part of a sealed trust 3 hours ago." It was Mr. Sterling, accompanied by 2 men in suits. Brenda spun around, clutching the jewelry box to her chest. "Leo, what are you doing here? Who are these people?" Mr. Sterling stepped forward. "I'm the administrator of the Eleanor Vance Trust, and those items aren't heirlooms, Brenda. They are evidence in a felony embezzlement case." The jeweler's shop felt like a vacuum. All the air had been sucked out. "Embezzlement?" Brenda shrieked, her voice cracking. "This is a family matter. Leo, tell them. This is my husband's inheritance." I stepped out from behind a display case, my hands in my pockets. "I told you not to wear them, Brenda. You aren't the executor. Mark isn't the executor. You both just assumed you were because you're the successful ones." One of the men with Mr. Sterling, a private investigator I'd hired months ago, held up a tablet. "Mrs. Vance, we have CCTV footage of you removing these items from the residence at 142 Oak Street. We also have the digital trail of the notice of eviction you sent to the actual trustee." "Actual trustee?" Brenda looked at me, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and pure hatred. "Leo? He's a loser. He hasn't worked in 2 years." "I haven't worked a traditional job," I corrected her calmly. "I've been managing Mom's private portfolio since she couldn't trust Mark's gambling debts." The jeweler spoke up, his voice hushed. "This brooch, the mechanism inside, it's not just jewelry, it's a custom-made housing for a high-security vault key. If this has been tampered with, the vaulted global security remains locked forever." Brenda's grip on the box loosened. The jewelry she thought was worth $20,000 was actually the access point to a portfolio worth millions, and she had just tried to sell it to a public pawn shop. "I'm calling Mark," she hissed, fumbling for her phone. "Go ahead. Ask him about the $400,000 he took from Mom's medical fund last year, the fund I just audited." Brenda froze. The color drained from her face, leaving her makeup looking like a mask. She realized she wasn't just in trouble for stealing a necklace, she was the face of a much larger crime. "You're bluffing," she whispered. "Mark said he had handled everything. He said you were nothing." "That was your first mistake, underestimating nothing." Just then my phone rang. It was the security firm at Mom's house. "It's Mr. Vance. Someone is trying to break into the basement safe with a circular saw. Should we engage?" I looked Brenda dead in the eye. "That would be Mark. Tell them to wait until he gets the outer door open. I want the breaking and entering charge to stick." Brenda lunged at me, her fingernails clawing for my face, screaming that I was destroying the family. But as the investigators grabbed her arms, she shouted something that stopped me cold. "You think you won? Mark already found the real will in the floorboards, Leo, the one that leaves you with 0. The silence in the jewelry store was now heavy with a new tension. Brenda was panting, a manic grin spreading across her face. "That's right," she sneered as the investigators held her back. "The life estate clause, the trust, all based on the old will. Mark found the updated version this morning. It was hidden under the floorboards in Mom's bedroom. He's at the house right now with a notary. You're the one who's going to jail for fraud, Leo." I didn't blink. I didn't shout. I simply looked at Mr. Sterling. "The floorboards?" I asked. Mr. Sterling sighed, almost pityingly. "It seems your brother fell for the oldest trick in the book." I turned back to Brenda. "My mother was a librarian for 40 years, Brenda. She didn't hide important documents under floorboards like a character in a cheap movie. She used safety deposit boxes and encrypted servers. Then what did Mark find? Brenda's voice wavered. I found the honeypot, I said. A document I drafted 6 months ago when I realized you two were looking for ways to cut me out. It's a decoy will. It contains a clause that says whoever presents it as the primary document effectively confesses to searching for it with malicious intent to bypass the probate court. Brenda's phone fell from her hand. It started vibrating on the floor. It was Mark. I picked it up and hit speaker. "Brenda, I've got it!" Mark's voice was ecstatic, breathless. "The notary is signing it now. It says Leo gets nothing but the old car. I'm heading to the bank to freeze his access right now." "Leo," I said into the phone. The silence on the other end was absolute. "Leo?" Mark's voice was suddenly small. "I hope you didn't pay that notary too much, because the document you're holding is printed on watermarked simulated evidence paper. Check the bottom right corner in UV light, Mark. Or better yet, look out the window. The police I called about the break-in should be arriving right about now." In the background of the call, the unmistakable wail of sirens began to grow louder. "Leo, wait!" Mark started to plead, but I hung up. I looked at the investigators. "She's all yours. Theft of property over $10,000, attempted fraud, and I believe we have enough on the medical fund embezzlement now." As they led a sobbing, screaming Brenda out of the store, I felt no joy, only a profound sense of relief. But the battle wasn't over. There was still the matter of the vault. "Mr. Sterling," I handed him the brooch, "we need to get to global security. If Mark is desperate, he won't go to the bank. He'll go to the one person who can help him disappear." "Who?" Sterling asked. "My uncle, Silas, the man who taught Mark everything he knows about stealing." We stepped out onto the sidewalk just as a black SUV pulled up, blocking my car. The window rolled down, revealing Uncle Silas. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the jewelry box in Sterling's hand. "I hear there's a family meeting, and I brought my own lawyer."
Uncle Silas was the black sheep who had somehow managed to stay wealthy while everyone else in the family struggled. He was a shark in a tailored suit, a man who viewed family as a series of hostile takeovers. "Silas," I said, stepping in front of Mr. Sterling, "I assumed you were behind Mark's sudden legal expertise." Silas stepped out of the SUV. He was followed by a woman carrying a sleek leather briefcase. Leo, always the protective son, but you've made a tactical error. You see, your mother borrowed a very large sum of money from my firm 10 years ago to keep this family afloat. She used her entire estate as collateral." He held out a hand, and his lawyer placed a weathered, yellowed contract in it. "This is a lien," Silas explained, tapping the paper. "It predates any trust, any will, and any honeypot you've cooked up. The jewelry, the house, and that vault you're so worried about, they belonged to me the moment she passed. Mark was just my collection agent." Mr. Sterling stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. "I've seen this document before, Silas. It was settled in 2018. "The principal was settled," Silas smirked. "The interest, however, was compounded. $1.2 million, Leo. Unless you can produce that amount in cash within the next hour, I'm taking possession of everything, including the key in that brooch." The weight of the situation finally hit me. I had been so focused on Mark and Brenda's petty greed that I hadn't prepared for Silas's legal juggernaut. If he had a valid lien, the trust was secondary. "I need to see the original," I said, my heart hammering. "You can see it in court after I've emptied the vault. My lawyer has already filed the emergency injunction. Your trust is frozen, Leo. You're officially a nobody again." He reached out to take the jewelry box from Sterling.
For a second, Sterling hesitated. "Wait," I said, my mind racing. "The lien was on the entire estate." "Everything," Silas confirmed. "Then you've just made a massive mistake, Uncle," I said, a slow realization dawning on me. "Because if you own the estate, you also own the liabilities." "What liabilities? The house is paid off, the taxes are current." "Not the environmental ones," I said. I pulled up a document on my phone, an old geological survey Mom had kept in her private files. Mom's house was built on a site that used to be a chemical storage facility in the 40s. There's an underground leak. The EPA just finished their secret assessment. The cleanup cost is estimated at $4.5 million. Since you've officially claimed the estate, you just inherited a multi-million-dollar debt to the federal government. Silas's smile didn't just fade, it vanished. His lawyer grabbed the phone from my hand to look at the survey. "Is this real?" he hissed at his lawyer. "If the survey is dated this month, yes," she whispered. "If he files this, the owner of the deed is liable for the entire sector's cleanup." Silas looked at me, then at the jewelry box, then back at the house down the street where the police were currently arresting his nephew. "You're lying," Silas growled. "You'd destroy your own inheritance just to stop me?" "I don't care about the money, Silas. I care about the truth. And the truth is, you have 60 seconds to tear up that lien or I hit send on this email to the EPA.
The standoff on the sidewalk felt like it lasted a lifetime. Silas stared at me, his face a mask of fury. He knew I was a quiet man, and quiet men usually have the most to lose. He didn't think I'd burn the whole house down just to keep him out of the kitchen. "Fine," Silas spat. He grabbed the lien from his lawyer and ripped it into 4 pieces. "The estate is yours, Leo, along with the $4 million debt. Enjoy your bankruptcy. You've always been a loser, just like your father." He turned to get back into his SUV. "Wait!" I called out. Silas paused, 1 foot in the vehicle. "What now? Want me to pay for your bus pass?" "You forgot something," I said. I pulled a small sealed envelope from my inner jacket pocket. The lien was a fake, Silas. I knew it, and you knew it. But this is real. It's the 2nd page of the agreement you made with my dad before he died, the one where you admitted to embezzling the original loan from the family business. Silas froze. His lawyer looked at him, her eyes wide. "That document was destroyed in the fire," Silas whispered, his voice trembling for the first time. "My mom was a librarian, Silas," I reminded him. "She didn't just keep books, she kept records. She made 3 microfiche copies of this confession. One is with Mr. Sterling, one is in that vault, and the 3rd is currently being scanned by the district attorney's office." The environmental leak was a bluff, a tactical distraction to get him to destroy his only legal leverage. But the embezzlement confession, that was the killing blow. You little rat," Silas hissed. "Mr. Sterling," I said, ignoring the insult, "please call the police. Tell them we have a lead on the 2012 corporate fraud case." Silas didn't wait. He lunged into his SUV and screamed at his driver to go. He sped off, leaving a cloud of exhaust and the smell of burnt rubber. "That was a bold move, Leo," Sterling said, wiping sweat from his brow. "The environmental bluff was brilliant, but is the confession real?" I handed him the envelope. Sterling opened it, expecting a decades-old document. Instead, he pulled out a single sheet of paper with a QR code printed on it. "What is this?" Sterling asked. "It's a link to a cloud drive," I said. "Mom didn't have the original confession. Silas was right, he did burn it. But he forgot that the company's old accountant kept a digital ledger. I found it in an old laptop in the attic. This QR code leads to the full forensic audit." Sterling scanned the code. As the files loaded, his face went from pale to ghostly white. "Leo, this isn't just Silas.
Look at these transfers. Mark wasn't just stealing Mom's pension, he was working with Silas to launder money through the family's estate for years. He looked up at me. If this goes to court, the entire family name is finished. Are you ready for that?
The news of Mark and Silas's partnership hit me like a physical blow. My brother wasn't just a greedy screw-up, he was a criminal partner to the man who had ruined our father. But I didn't have time to process the betrayal. As Sterling and I turned to head to the security vault, 3 police cruisers pulled up, sirens off but lights flashing. An officer I hadn't seen at the house stepped out. "Leo Vance?" he asked, his hand resting on his holster. "Yes?" "You're under arrest for grand larceny and the forgery of legal documents," the officer said. I blinked. "I'm sorry? I'm the one who called the police to the house." "A Mr. Mark Vance just presented a notarized statement and a series of emails from your account," the officer continued, pulling out handcuffs. "Emails where you describe a plan to forge a fake trust to steal your mother's jewelry and frame your brother for embezzlement. We also found the forgery kit in your car trunk." I looked at my car. The trunk was slightly ajar. Brenda. When she was screaming and lunging at me earlier, she wasn't just trying to scratch my face. She was a distraction. One of Silas's men must have planted the evidence while I was focused on her. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding," Mr. Sterling began, but the officer cut him off. "Save it for the judge, counselor. We have the emails. They were sent from his IP address this morning." As they shoved me into the back of the cruiser, I saw a familiar black SUV parked a block away. Silas was watching. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked like the man who had just won the lottery. In the back of the squad car, my mind raced. They had my phone, they had my car, they had the jewelry box. I was being erased. But Silas and Mark had made one fatal error. They thought I was using my personal computer for the evidence. I looked at the dash cam of the police car. I knew it was recording. "Officer," I said, my voice calm, projecting clearly, "I want it on the record that I am a licensed beta tester for Siren Security Home Automation. My entire house, including the trunk of my car, is fitted with internal smart sensors that record every time a lid is opened and capture a 360-degree image of the person doing it." I saw the officer's eyes flick to the rearview mirror. The forgery kit was planted at 10:14 a.m. by a man wearing a gray hoodie. The data is already uploaded to a secure third-party server. If you check my sent folder for those emails, you'll also find they were sent via a VPN located in Silas Vance's office building. The officer slowed the car down. He picked up his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 42. I need a tech sweep on the Vance evidence immediately, and get me the owner of the Siren Security server." The radio crackled back. "Copy, Unit 42, but we have a problem. The Siren Security server just went offline. There's been a massive data wipe at the provider's headquarters." I felt a chill. Silas hadn't just framed me, he was deleting the truth in real time.
The data wipe should have been the end. Without the sensor footage, it was my word against a notarized trail of evidence. But Silas forgot one thing. I wasn't just a nobody. I was a nobody who would spend 5 years as a systems architect for the very company that managed his firm's cloud storage. The police held me for 6 hours. 6 hours during which Silas and Mark consolidated their power. They scheduled an emergency meeting at the family's holding company to officially dissolve the trust and sell the assets to Silas's firm. Thanks to Mr. Sterling's legal maneuvering, I was released on a technicality. The search of my trunk had been performed without a warrant before the arrest. I didn't go home. I didn't go to the police. I went to the boardroom. I walked in just as Silas was raising a pen to sign the acquisition papers. Mark was sitting next to him, looking smug, a bandage on his hand from where he'd tried to saw into Mom's safe. Brenda was there too, out on bail, wearing a fresh coat of arrogance. The room went silent as I pushed open the double doors. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here, Leo," Mark sneered. "The police are still building the case. You're finished." "Actually, Mark, I said, walking to the head of the table. I'm the only one here who isn't finished. I pulled a small, battered laptop from my bag, not my personal one, but Mom's old library computer. You wiped the Siren security servers, Silas, I said. Impressive, expensive, but you didn't wipe the physical ledger. What are you talking about? There is no ledger. Mom knew you'd try to delete the digital world, Silas, I said, so she used a 1980s technology you completely overlooked. She used an automated dot matrix printer hidden in the basement wall. Every time a file was modified in the family trust, it printed a hard copy. Real ink, real paper, no delete button. I opened a thick folder. Inside were thousands of pages of logs. This is the record of every penny you've laundered, I said. And look at this, the log from this morning. It shows the IP address that accessed my email to send those fake confessions. It matches your office, Silas, and it was signed with your private encryption key. I turned to the board members, the silent aunts and uncles who had watched Silas bully the family for years. And here, I said, pulling out a single golden key, is the reason we're all really here. I walked over to the portrait of our grandfather on the wall. I pushed it aside, revealing a small, high-security keyhole. You thought the jewelry was the key, I looked at Brenda. The brooch was just a holder. This is the master override for the company's voting shares. I turned the key. A hidden panel in the table slid open, revealing a screen. A pre-recorded video of my mother began to play. If this video is playing, it means Leo has finally used the key, and it means Silas and Mark have finally proven themselves unworthy of the Vance name. Mark's face went gray. Silas stood up, reaching for the laptop. Turn that off. But the video wasn't the twist. The twist was the text scrolling at the bottom of the screen. The text scrolling at the bottom of the screen was a live feed of the company's bank accounts. As the video played, the numbers began to drop rapidly. Silas, Mom's voice continued on the recording, her tone calm and steady. I knew you'd try to steal the company. I knew you'd treat Leo like he was nothing. But Leo was the only one who stayed, the only one who listened. What is happening to the accounts? Brenda screamed, pointing at the screen. That's our money! Stop it! It's not your money, I said. Mom didn't just leave a trust. She left a poison pill clause. The moment the master key is turned while an unauthorized acquisition is in progress, the company's assets are automatically transferred to a non-profit foundation dedicated to victims of corporate fraud. Silas lunged for the laptop, but the board's security guards, who had been watching the evidence of his embezzlement on the screen, stepped in his way. You've bankrupted us, Mark yelled, his voice cracking. You ruined everything. We could have been rich. We were rich, Mark, I said. We had a family. You traded it for a gold necklace and a fake lien. But Silas wasn't done. He started laughing, a cold, hysterical sound. You think a poison pill stops me? Silas wheezed. The foundation is a shell, Leo. I created that foundation 5 years ago. You just transferred the entire Vance fortune directly into my private offshore account. You were so busy being smart that you fell for the trap I set before your mother even got sick. He pulled out a tablet and showed the screen. See, the transfer is complete. $15 million. It's gone. You have the company, Leo, but the company is an empty shell. You're the king of a graveyard. Mark and Brenda's faces lit up with a sick relief. They didn't care if the company was ruined, as long as Silas, their partner, had the cash. I looked at the screen. I looked at Silas. You're right, Silas. The foundation was a shell. I tapped a command on my own phone. But I didn't send the money to your foundation. I used the master override to change the routing numbers while you were busy shouting. The money didn't go to your offshore account. Silas's smile faltered. He began typing furiously on his tablet. No, the transaction went through. It says success. It was a success, I agreed. But look at the recipient's name. Silas stared at the screen. His eyes bulged. The Internal Revenue Service? Every penny of that $15 million went toward the unpaid back taxes and penalties you've been dodging for a decade, Silas, I said. You're not rich. You're not even broke. You're $2 million in the hole to the federal government, and they're already outside. The heavy boardroom doors swung open. This time, it wasn't the local police. It was the feds.
The room erupted into chaos, but for me, everything went quiet. I watched as the federal agents moved in. Silas tried to flip the table, but they had him in zip ties before he could even stand. Mark was sobbing, begging the agents to listen, while Brenda was frantically trying to hide the stolen jewelry in her purse. An agent stepped up to her. "Mrs. Vance, that jewelry is part of a federal seizure now. Hand it over." She looked at me, her face twisted with a level of hatred I'd never seen. "You did this. You destroyed our lives over a few pieces of gold." "No," I said, walking toward the door. "I just stopped you from destroying Mom's legacy. The gold was never the point." I walked out of the boardroom and down the hall of the company my father had built. Mr. Sterling was waiting for me at the elevators. "It's done, Leo," Sterling said, handing me a final document. "The feds have the ledger. Silas, Mark, and Brenda are going away for a long time. The house is back in your name, and the poison pill actually left enough in a side fund to pay for the environmental cleanup and restore the family name." "I don't want the company, Sterling," I said. "Sell it. Give the employees a severance and donate the rest to the library Mom loved." "And you?" Sterling asked. "What will you do?" I thought about the years of being called a nobody, the years of sitting in the corner while they laughed at my failure. "I'm going to go for a walk in a park where nobody knows my name." As I stepped out of the building, the sun was bright. I saw the news vans arriving, reporters shouting about the Vance family fall. They wanted a story of greed and betrayal. They didn't see the quiet man in the plain jacket walking away from the fire he'd started. I reached into my pocket and felt the small silver flash drive, the one that still held the only thing I truly cared about, a recording of my mom laughing at a birthday party years before the greed had taken over. They thought the jewelry was the key. They thought the money was the prize. But the real power wasn't in what I took from them. It was in what I was willing to give up to do what was right. They called me a nobody until the world found out I was the only one who knew how to keep a secret. Never underestimate the quiet man in the room. He isn't just listening, he's keeping the receipts.